The Classical Antiquity, also known as the Classical Era or the Classical Period. It is the period of culture history between 18th century before Christ era and 5th or 6th century after that, centered on the Mediterranean Sea. Comprising the interlocking civilization of ancient Greece and ancient Rome, collectively known as the Greco-Roman world. It is the period in which Greek and Roman society flourished and wielded great influence throughout the Europe, North America, and Western Asia. Conventionally, it is taken to begin with the earliest record of epic Greek poetry of Homer, by 18th to 7th century before Christ, and continues through the emergence of Christianity and the decline of the Roman Empire. Throughout 15th century, after that or Anno Domini. It ends with the dissolution of classical culture at the close of late antiquity by 300 to 600, blending into the early Middle Ages of 600 to 1000 before Christ. Such a wide sampling of history and territory covers many disparate cultures and periods. Classical antiquity may refer also to an idealized vision among later people of what was in Edgar Allan Poe's words, the glory that was Greece, and the grandeur that was Rome. The culture of the ancient Greece, together with some influences from the ancient Near East, was the basis of art, philosophy, society, and educational ideas. Until the Roman or the imperial period, the Roman preserved, imitated, and spread over Europe these ideas until they were able to competitively rival the Greek culture as the Latin language became widespread in the cultural and become bilingual, Greek and Latin. This Greco-Roman cultural foundation has been immensely influential on the language, politics, law, and educational system, philosophy, science, warfare, poetry, historiography, ethics, rhetoric, art, architecture of the modern world. From the surviving fragments of the classical antiquity, a revival movement was gradually formed from the 14th century onwards, which came to be later known in Europe as the Renaissance period, and again, resurgence during various neoclassical revivals in the 18th and 19th century. The classical era is divided into different periods. The first one is the Archaic period, between 18th to 16th centuries before Christ era. The earliest period of classical antiquity takes place before the background of gradual reappearance of historical sources following the Bronze Age collapse. The 18th and 17th centuries before Christ are still largely proto-historical, so when it means proto, it is the first one na explanation. Tapos, with the earliest Greek alphabetic inscriptions appearing in the first half of the 8th century, Homer is usually assumed to have lived in the 18th or 17th century before Christ. Homer is the author of the Greek mythologies, Greek gods and goddesses. And his lifetime is often taken as marking in the beginning of classical antiquity. It is the same period falls the traditional date of the establishment of the ancient Olympic Games between 776 before Christ. So, it is the first date was the Olympic Games held. It is 776 before Christ. So, imagine that. So, the Carthaginians. The Phoenicians originally expanded from Canaan ports. By the 8th century, dominating trade in the Mediterranean. Carthage was found in 814 before Christ, and Carthaginians by 700 before Christ had firmly established a stronghold in Sicily, Italy, and Sardinia, which created conflicts of the interest with Etruria. So, after the Carthaginians, we have the Greeks. The Archaic period followed the Greek Dark Ages and saw significant advancement in political theory and rise of democracy, philosophy, theater, and poetry, as well as the theater with written languages, which had been lost during the Dark Ages. In poetry, the Archaic period sees the development of Orientalizing style, which signals a shift from geometric style of darker late ages and the accumulation of influence derived from the Egypt, Polynesia, and Syria. Pottery style associated with the later part of Archaic Age are the block figure poetry, which originated in Corinth during 17th century before Christ, and its successor, the red figure style, developed by Antioch's painter in about 530 before Christ. So that's all.
The Iron Age Italy. The Etruscan established political control in the region by the 7th century BC. Forming the aristocratic and monarchical elite, the Etruscans apparently lost power in the area by the late 6th century BC. And at this point, the Italic tribes reinvented their government by creating a republic with much greater restraints on the ability of rulers to exercise power. According to legend, Rome was founded on April 21, 753 BC by twin descendants of the Trojan prince, Aeneas, Romulus, and Remus. As the city was bereft of the woman, legend says that the Latins invited the Sabines to a festival and stole their unmarried maidens, leading to the integration of Latins and the Sabines. Archaeological evidence indeed shows the first traces of settlements at the Roman Forum in the mid-8th century BC. Though settlements in the Palatine Hill may date back to the 10th century BC. The seventh and final king of Rome was Tarquinius Superbus, as the son of Tarquinius Priscus and the son-in-law of Civius Tullius. Superbus was of Etruscan birth. It was during his reign that the Etruscans reached their apex of power. Superbus removed and destroyed all the Sabine shrines and the altars from the Tarpeian rock, enraging the people of Rome. The people came to object to his rule, and he failed to recognize the rank of Lucretia, a patrician Roman in the hands of his own son, Lucretia's kinsman Lucius Junius Brutus, rank of Lucina, a patriarchal Roman, at the hands of his own son. Ancestors to Marcus Brutus, summoned to Senate and had Superbus and the monarch expelled from Rome in 510 BC. After Superbus' expulsion, the Senate voted to never again allow the ruling king reform Rome into a republican government in 509 BC. In fact, the Latin word rex, meaning king, became a dirty and hated word throughout the republic and later on the empire. Classical Greece, 5th to 4th centuries BC. The classical period of ancient Greece corresponds to most of the 5th and 4th centuries BC, in particular from the fall of the Athenian tyranny in 510 BC to the death of Alexander the Great in 323 BC. In 510, Spartan troops helped the Athenians overthrow the tyrant Hitler, son of Pisistratus. Cleomenes I, king of Sparta, put in place of pro-Spartan oligarchy conducted by Isagoras. The Greco-Persian Wars 499 to 499 BC, concluded by the Peace of Callias, gave way not only to the liberation of Greece, Macedon, Thrace, and Ionia from Persian rule, but it also resulted in giving the dominant position of Athens in the Delian League, which led to conflict with Sparta and the Peloponnesian League, resulting the Peloponnesian War 431 to 444 BC, which ended in Spartan victory. Greece entered the 4th century under the Spartan hegemony, but by 395 BC, the Spartan rulers removed Lysander from office, and Sparta officed her naval supremacy. Athens Argos, Thebes, and Corinth, the latter two which were formerly Spartan allies, challenged Spartan dominance in the Corinthian War, which ended inclusively in 387 BC. Later, in 371 BC, the Theban generals Epideminodas and Pelopidas won a victory at the Battle of Leuctra. The result of this battle was the end of Spartan supremacy and the establishment of Theban hegemony. Thebes sought to maintain its position until it was finally eclipsed by the rising power of Macedon in 346 BC. Under Philip II, 359 to 336 BC, Macedon expanded into the territory of the Phaeonians and the Thracians and the Illyrians. Philip's son, Alexander the Great, 356 to 323 BC, managed to briefly extend Macedonian power not only over the general central Greek city-states, but also to the Persian Empire, including Egypt and the lands as far east as that ranges of India. The classical period conventionally ends at the death of Alexander in 323 BC, and the proclamation of his empire was at this time divided among the dynasty. Hellenistic period, 323 BC to 146 BC. Classical Greece entered the Hellenistic period with the rise of Macedon and the conquest of Alexander the Great. Greek became the lingua franca far beyond Greek itself, and the Hellenistic culture interacted with the cultures of Persia, Central Asia, and Egypt. Significant advances were made in the sciences, geography, astronomy, mathematics, and etc. Notably with the followers of Aristotle at Aristotelianism. The Hellenistic period ended with the rise of Roman Republic to a super-regional power in the 2nd century BC, and the Roman conquest in Greece.
In terms of music in classical era, orchestra as soloist the birth of a symphony. As the Baroque era moved into the classical period starting in the 1760s, the orchestra became something of a soloist in its own right, with the evolution of the symphony from the musical filter to the concert main attraction. The early symphonies were in 3 movements and fairly short. In the course of the next 60 to 70 years, they acquired a 4th movement, another 10 to 15 minutes worth of music, and a new exciting emotional depth. Haydn is the composer and credited with establishing the symphony as a significant showcase for the orchestra. Mozart also created a piece in the form, especially with his last 3 symphonies. At the same time, at the opposite end of the spectrum, a new kind of ensemble was taking shape, the string quartet, with just 2 violins, 1 viola, and a cello. The string quartet lacked the breadth of tone colors of full orchestra, but it more than made up for the flexible agility, subtlety, and intimacy. In fact, the lack of orchestra bells and whistles was seen by many composers as an opportunity for them to really concentrate on the essence of music itself and write some of their most personal musical statements. Here again, Haydn led the way with Mozart following close behind.
The game changer Ludwig van Beethoven, the composer who most famously led his transition from classical to romantic, was Ludwig van Beethoven. His musical heritage and training was truly classical, and his earlier works show his absolute mastery of the musical language of the classical period. Soon, though he begins to experiment pushing against the boundaries of traditional forms and structures to find new ways to express his musical vision. His music focused less on the inherent beauty of a musical idea and more on how the idea can develop and evolve in the shape of the course of the whole piece. Often, there is a sense that the music takes as a psychological or emotional journey. Ultimately, triumphing over great hardship, there is obvious paralleled with Beethoven's own personal tragedy, the deepness that began to afflict him in his early 30s. But heroism was also a revolutionary ideal that Beethoven embraced both politically and personally, the power and courage of the individual.
Classical literature, the literature of ancient Greece and Rome. The term usually spelled classical is also used for the literature of any language. In a period notable for the excellence and enduring quality of its writer's work, in ancient Greece, such a period extended from about 500 to 320 BCE. The Golden Age of Rome ran about 70 BCE to 18 CE. The Golden Age of Rome ran about French literature of the second half of the 7th century is considered classical, as is English literature of 1660 to 1740. The works produced and the critical standards that prevail in both eras emulated those of the classical periods in Greek and Latin, although this criteria is not an essential characteristics of a classical literature.
Ancient Greek art stands out among that of other Asian cultures for its development of naturalistic but idealized depiction of the human body, in which largely nude male figures were generally the focus of innovation. The rate of stylistic development between about 750 and 300 BC was remarkable by Asian standards, and its surviving works is best seen in sculpture. There were important innovations in painting which have to be essentially reconstructed due to the lack of original survivals of quality other than the distinct field of painted pottery. The earliest art by Greeks is generally excluded from ancient Greek art, and is then known as ancient art. This included Cycladic art and the art of the Minoan and Mycenaean cultures from the Greek Bronze Age. The art of ancient Greece is usually divided stylistically into four periods: the geometric, archaic, classical, and Hellenistic. The geometric age is usually dated from about 1000 BC, although in reality little is known about art in Greece during the preceding 200 years. Traditionally known as the Greek Dark Ages, the 7th century BC witnessed the slow development of the archaic style as exemplified by the black figure style of vase painting. Around 500 BC, Shortly before the onset of the Persian Wars, 480 BC to 448 BC is usually taken as the dividing line between the Archaic and the Classical periods. And the reign of Alexander the Great, 336 BC to 350 BC, is taken as separating the Classical from the Hellenistic periods. From some points in the 1st century BC onwards, Greco-Roman is used or more local terms for the Eastern Greek word.